After 30 years of marriage, I thought I'd held our family together. Until the day I found out. My husband had a 31-year-old secret son. I said nothing. I quietly gathered the evidence and waited. At the family gathering, I exposed everything. They spent decades putting on a show. I only needed 1 minute to bring the whole performance crashing down. My name is Margaret Brooks. I'm a grandmother, a mother, and today I turned 60. Coincidentally, it's also the first day of 3rd grade for my grandson Mason. That evening, Mason came home from school and my son Brian brought back a cake. I'd spent the entire afternoon in the kitchen, preparing a big family dinner. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, baked mac and cheese, a fresh garden salad. Every dish was something they all loved. Once my husband, Harold, and my daughter-in-law, Melissa, got home from work, the whole family sat down around the dining table. Melissa smiled as she looked over the spread and turned to Mason. "You'd better thank Grandma," she said cheerfully. "She made all this just for your back-to-school celebration." But Harold's face darkened. He frowned and snapped at me. "You cooked all this and didn't even think to get some wine?" Brian quickly stepped in to smooth things over. "Dad, let's not start tonight, okay?" he said, placing the cake in the center of the table and tearing off the packaging with a smile. "Come on, let's do cake and candles first." Harold's comment stung a little, but seeing the grin on Brian's face helped ease the bitterness in my chest. I joined him in opening the cake box. But the moment the lid came off, I froze. The cake read, "Congratulations, Mason." That was it. No balloons, no candles with my name, no hint of a birthday message. Just those few words. I leaned in, hoping I'd missed something. But no, that was all there was. I'd really thought Brian would remember this year. I'd even reminded him just a few days ago. Told him again that my birthday was the same day as Mason's school milestone. I told him I was hoping for a proper celebration this time, to feel seen, to feel remembered. But here we were again. Forgotten. Brian noticed my pause and called out, "Mom, what are you doing? Where's the lighter? Help me find it so Mason can make a wish." Harold barked from the other end of the table. "Did you go deaf? He asked you to grab the lighter. What are you standing there for?" I swallowed the ache in my chest and forced a smile. "Brian," I said softly, "aside from Mason's big day, do you remember what else today is?" He furrowed his brow, confused. "What do you mean, Mom?" Harold growled again. "She's always gotta make things complicated. Just get the damn lighter." I glanced at Mason, then said nothing more. There was no use turning this into a scene. Not in front of the kids. I walked into the kitchen, grabbed the lighter and handed it to Brian, watching him light the candles. Everyone else at the table was laughing and chatting, celebrating. Everyone except me. Dinner had barely started when Mason's fork slipped off the table. Melissa turned to me immediately, but Brian and Harold were still deep in conversation, completely unaware. Mason twisted around in his seat and shouted, "Grandma, I dropped my fork. Go get me another one." For the first time, I didn't spring to my feet. I stayed seated, my tone calm. "Mason, you can do that yourself." Mason frowned and kicked at his mother's chair. "Mom, Grandma won't get my fork." Melissa gently tried to calm him down, then turned to me with a sweet smile and raised her voice a little. "Margaret, where do you keep the extra silverware? I'll grab one for him." Harold shot me a glare the second she spoke. "Go get him a fork." Brian reached out to stop Melissa, casually brushing it off. "Mom will take care of it. You don't need to." I stood up, but I didn't head to the kitchen. Instead, I walked straight into my bedroom and began packing my clothes and gathering my bank statements. The money in those bank statements came from the food stall I ran. All these years, Harold contributed little to this family. His paycheck was modest to begin with, and whatever he earned mostly disappeared at poker nights with his buddies. Barely anything ever made it home. After Brian was born, I stopped working. With no one around to help with childcare, I became a full-time mom. But Harold always complained I spent too much, as if every dollar I used was a burden to him. After hearing it one too many times, I stopped asking him for money altogether. Instead, I set up a little food stall at the local farmer's market. I was good with my hands and even better with people. The stall did surprisingly well. Over time, I managed to save up a decent sum. To be honest, back then I already thought about leaving him. But I didn't. I was afraid Brian would grow up in a broken home. I didn't want him to suffer because of us. So I stayed quiet, kept my head down and carried on. I've spent my whole life putting others first. Growing up, I was the obedient child. The The way I was raised taught me that divorce was shameful, that it would ruin a woman's reputation, hurt the family, and worst of all, scar the children. So I endured. I endured Harold's drunken tantrums. I endured my mother-in-law's endless criticism. I told myself I had to hold on, for Brian, for the sake of giving him a whole family. And so I did. For 30 years. But how many 30 years does a person get in a lifetime? I wiped the tears from the corners of my eyes, grabbed my suitcase and stepped back into the living room, still echoing with laughter as if nothing had happened. Mason already had a new set of silverware in his hands. Melissa must have gone to the kitchen and gotten it for him. The moment I walked in, she glanced at me with a cold, dismissive look, then lowered her eyes and continued eating like I wasn't even there. Harold was downing a glass of whiskey in one gulp. The bottle was new. Brian had just gone out to buy it from the liquor store next door, a little treat for his father. Watching that scene made my heart sink even deeper. I've always hated alcohol. When Harold drinks, he becomes someone else. Loud, violent, reckless. He smashes things, yells at everyone, sometimes even disappears for days without a word. And every time it's me left picking up the pieces. Over the years, everything I'd scrimped and saved to furnish this house. The furniture, the appliances, the little comforts I worked so hard for, he's destroyed one drunken rampage at a time. Each shattered object was a punch to my gut. And yet Brian knows exactly what his father turns into when he's drunk. He's seen it. So why does he keep buying him alcohol? Maybe ever since he moved into that big 3-bedroom house I bought for him in that nice suburban neighborhood, he's forgotten what it's like to live under the same roof as a drunk. Or maybe he never really understood it to begin with, because he was never the one left behind to clean up the wreckage. Or maybe he's just a coward. Too afraid of Harold's temper to stand up to him, so he plays along and lets me be the scapegoat. I stood by their dining table, eyes locked on Harold. I want a divorce, I said, my voice steady. I've had enough of this life. The room fell silent. Just moments ago it had been filled with laughter. Now it was cut clean like a blade through air. Harold exploded first. He slammed his glass down and looked like he was about to flip the entire table. But after a quick glance at Melissa and Mason, he forced himself to stop, though his voice roared through the room. Have you lost your mind? You're nearly 70 and you want a divorce now? Brian jumped up too. Mom, what are you talking about? We're all just trying to enjoy dinner here. Why ruin everything? Melissa clutched Mason, her expression unreadable, watching the scene unfold like it was nothing more than entertainment. I let out a quiet laugh, cold and hollow. So this is what it's come to, decades in this house, and I'm still the most dispensable one in it. I'll be staying at a hotel tonight, I said calmly. Tomorrow morning, you're coming with me to sign the divorce papers. Harold's face twisted with rage. I'm not agreeing to this. Are you insane? You want to tear this family apart? Aren't you ashamed of what people will say? Brian chimed in immediately, siding with him. Dad's right. Come on, Mom, you're both too old for this. What would people think if you split up now? Harold, seeing Brian take his side, smugly poured himself another drink and knocked it back like a king on his throne. That arrogant, dismissive look on his face made my chest tighten with fury. I almost couldn't hold it in. I came within inches of grabbing that glass and throwing it in his face. Brian must have seen the fire in my eyes. He hurried to intervene. Mom, you're not seriously doing this just because Dad had a few drinks tonight, are you? Look, I'll stay here tonight and keep an eye on him. If he acts out, I'll handle it. Let's just finish dinner, all right? Whatever's bothering you, we'll fix it. Just don't bring up divorce again. Anything but that. Anything but that. That's all my son has ever offered. Empty reassurances, hollow promises. Never once has he truly stood up for me. I gave him a faint, bitter smile. Brian, tell me something. Do you even remember what day my birthday is? He froze. His lips parted, but no words came out. Of course he didn't remember. Not since he got married. Not once. I've grown used to being forgotten. But today, I'm done pretending it doesn't hurt. I'm done trying to please everyone. Done sacrificing myself for a family that never saw me. At 60, with nothing but a terminal diagnosis giving me 6 months to live, I finally understand. If I don't live for myself now, when will I ever? I left them behind without another word, dragging my suitcase toward the door. That's when Melissa suddenly stepped in front of me, pulling Mason with her like a human shield. Margaret, come on, she said gently, her voice soft and polished as ever, a pleasant smile still pinned to her lips. We're family. Every family has its little rough patches. Why don't we just sit down and talk things through? Then she leaned in close, her voice dropping to a whisper by my ear. Didn't we agree not to bring up divorce again? I immediately stepped back, putting distance between us. Well, I've changed my mind. Is that a problem? After I divorce Harold, I don't want any of you contacting me again. This time I meant it. I was done. I wasn't just leaving Harold, I was cutting ties with every last one of them. What do you mean, none of us? Brian's voice rang out as he jumped up, rushing over to block the doorway. Mom, what the hell is going on? What do you mean you changed your mind? Changed your mind about what? Exactly what it sounds like, I said calmly. If you're struggling to understand, maybe your wife can explain it to you. Now step aside, I'm leaving. I nudged the suitcase forward, signaling them to move. Margaret, you can't just walk out. Melissa suddenly grabbed me, clutching my arm as tears began to stream down her face, like a perfectly timed performance. What about Mason? Who's going to look after him now? What about his dinners? Are you really okay with him eating fast food every night? What if he gets sick? Don't you care? He's your grandson, the one you raised, your precious little boy. Can you really walk away from him? Her words were carefully chosen, delivered with the perfect mix of emotion and manipulation. But to me it was all absurd, so absurd I couldn't help but laugh coldly. Seeing that, Melissa seemed to think she'd struck a chord. She kept going, her voice sweet and coaxing. You care about him, don't you, Margaret? And honestly, Brian and I need you. We really do. If it weren't for you keeping the house in order, taking care of Mason, handling everything behind the scenes. Well, let's be honest, Brian's not exactly a natural homemaker. She glanced over at Brian with a smile, then leaned in again, whispering, you know, every time my mom visits, she always praises Brian for being such a responsible husband. She tells me I married the right man. She chuckled softly. Of course, she doesn't know that it's all you. You're the one holding everything together. You've given Brian a good reputation, and I know that must feel good, right? When people praise him, deep down they're really praising you. And besides, have you said enough? I cut her off, my voice sharp and icy. Can you just shut up already? Melissa froze, stunned like she was seeing a different person for the first time. What are you staring at? I snapped. Never seen me angry before? What do you mean, what about Mason? Isn't he your son? Isn't it your responsibility to raise him? And you can't live without me? You're both in your 30s, what, still not weaned? Now get your hands off me. I've watched you play this perfect daughter-in-law act for years. Aren't you tired? Because I sure as hell am. Starting today, I'm done. I'm no one's mother, no one's grandmother, and definitely no one's wife. From now on, I live for me. Move. When she still didn't let go, I shoved her aside. Mason saw me push his mom and immediately lunged forward, giving me a hard shove in return. Grandma, how dare you touch my mom? Do it again and see what happens. Brian rushed in to shield Melissa, then turned on me, his voice shaking with rage. Mom, you've crossed the line. You need to apologize to my wife. Harold stood up too, joining the chorus of outrage. The three of them closed in, yelling, accusing, crying. Chaos filled the room like an explosion. And yet, somehow, I still hadn't expected it to hurt this much. I'd always known what kind of people they were, deep down. But seeing them bare their true faces like this, seeing just how quickly love could turn into judgment and blame, still brought tears to my eyes. These were the people I had spent my whole life caring for. All I wanted was a divorce. All I wanted was to live for myself just once. Why did that have to be so hard? If you won't let me walk away in peace, then fine. No one gets to walk away untouched. You like putting on a show? Then I'll give you one. Let's see how well you all perform when every ugly secret is dragged into the light. Alright, everyone, calm down. I'll apologize. I turned toward Melissa and gave a small, polite bow. I'm sorry, Melissa. I shouldn't have pushed you. I apologize for my behavior. She froze, clearly thrown off by my sudden shift. But she recovered quickly, casting a quick glance at Brian before offering me a teary smile. It's okay. I'm not upset. I looked at Brian and Mason, my tone even. What do you think? Was my apology good enough? Do I deserve forgiveness? Mason gave a small nod, saying nothing. Brian looked awkward. Mom, it's just an apology, no need to be so formal. I nodded slightly. So then, would you agree when someone does something wrong they should apologize? Mason nodded again. Brian hesitated this time. His eyes flicked toward Melissa as if searching for a cue before finally nodding. Yeah, of course. If you do something wrong, you should apologize. Good. I let out a cold laugh. That's all I needed to hear. I grabbed my suitcase and shoved it aside near the door, then turned and calmly walked back into the living room. I pulled a chair over and sat down right in the center of the chaos. Now, I said coolly, let's talk about your father. Brian frowned, confused. Melissa's expression shifted instantly, nervous and guarded. Harold looked like someone had yanked the floor out from under him. Did you know, I said, cutting straight to the point, your father has another family? The words landed like a hammer. Harold shot up from his seat, grabbing my arm in a panic. His voice was loud, angry, and trembling. What the hell are you talking about? Are you out of your mind saying this in front of the kids? Dad, let her finish, Brian said firmly, stepping between us, surprisingly taking my side for once. Harold's face turned red. Brian, she's making things up. You know what kind of man I am. I yanked my arm free and stepped back. Am I making it up? Ask Melissa. She was with me when I found out. You wanted to be a bystander? Not tonight. Now you're part of the story too. All eyes turned to Melissa. Well, I asked. Tell them. Am I lying? Silence crashed over the room. For the first time all night, everything was still. Melissa stared at the floor. Seconds ticked by like hours before she finally mumbled, barely audible. I don't know. Maybe Margaret was just upset and said something she didn't mean. Harold exhaled in relief. Of course. I hadn't expected her to tell the truth anyway. I let out a dry, bitter laugh and continued. Her name is Denise White. She lives at 113B Lincoln Street, apartment 302. That's where your father's other home is. If you don't believe me, go knock on the door yourself. I paused, then added casually, oh, and be polite when you do. The one who opens the door might be your brother, he's 31. Just a year older than you. He's married, has a little daughter. So that means besides Mason, your father also has a granddaughter. That last line hit like a grenade. Harold's face went sheet white. Melissa's panic was impossible to hide. They never imagined I'd know this much. Not just the affair but the address, the age, even the child. And they certainly didn't expect me to burn down their perfect little stage in one blow. None of this would have come to light without Joanne Carter, my so-called best friend. She was the one who first stumbled upon Harold with another woman. She followed them discreetly, did her own little investigation, and within a few days sent me a neat little file, complete with photos, the woman's background, and even the exact address of their little love nest. But what Joanne didn't know was that the day before she sent me that file, I had already seen it with my own eyes. That afternoon I was at the grocery store, pushing a cart overflowing with household essentials. I was hot, sweaty, and aching from lugging everything around, just waiting my turn at the checkout line, when I saw him. Harold. There he was, not 20 feet away, walking alongside a woman about my age. He was carrying several large shopping bags, following closely behind her like a doting husband. She had silver gray hair, sleek and well kept. Her skin was smooth, clearly well cared for. She wore elegant clothes, walked with poise. Everything about her screamed comfort, luxury, a life without strain. In her other hand she held a little girl's hand, probably the same age as Mason. The girl bounced along cheerfully ahead of them, giggling and looking back now and then. "Grandma," she called out sweetly to the woman. Then she turned toward Harold, beaming. "Grandpa." A happy family, picture perfect. Warm, wholesome, idyllic. Me. I was sweating through my shirt, dragging a heavy cart, my fingers swollen and sore from carrying everything on my own. I stood frozen in place, staring at my husband as he basked in domestic bliss with another family. His face was soft, gentle in a way I hadn't seen in decades. The man who barely spoke to me at home, who treated our family like an obligation, was now playing the role of the devoted husband, the caring father, the loving grandfather. And for what? My hands went numb. The cart slipped from my grasp and clattered to the floor. Apples and oranges rolled everywhere. I snapped. I stormed toward him, fire boiling in my veins. "Harold!" I roared, grabbing him by the collar. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, completely pale, stunned, speechless. His new little family froze in place. The girl shrank behind the woman, clearly frightened, while the woman clutched Harold's arm, trying to pull him away. But I wasn't letting him go. Years of silent resentment erupted in that one moment. I shoved him hard. "What the hell is this?" I shouted. "What have you been doing all these years? Where the hell has our money gone? You owe me an answer." People stopped and stared. Shoppers paused their carts, whispering behind their hands. Some even started recording on their phones. I didn't care. Not anymore. All those years I swallowed my pride, bit my tongue, told myself to keep the peace. For what? To be replaced like some worn-out appliance? To watch him live the life he denied me? No. I wasn't going to be silent anymore. I was going to make sure the truth came out, and I didn't care who saw it. We were still arguing in the middle of the store when, by some cruel twist of timing, Melissa showed up after work and spotted the entire scene unfolding. She rushed over, trying to pull me away, trying to calm me down. But it was too late. The curtain had already fallen. There was no taking it back. The truth was out and no one could pretend anymore. That night we sat in the living room and I finally learned the whole truth. It turned out that the year I was pregnant with Brian, Harold had already started seeing that woman. It turned out, every time he vanished for a few days after drinking, he wasn't out entertaining clients like he claimed, he was simply going back to their home. It turned out most of the money he earned over the years didn't go into this household at all. It went into building a life with them. As I listened to revelation after revelation, each, it turned out, felt more absurd than the last. But the most laughable part? That woman knew about me from the very beginning. She knew Harold and I were together, knew we were planning to get married. She just didn't care. And what's worse, during our conversation she actually tried to advise me. Told me not to make a fuss. Said she was thinking of our family. She said she didn't want Harold, at his age, to end up a lonely old man in a broken home. And then, with a straight face, she told me she was fine staying in the background. Said she didn't mind if I remained the legal wife as long as she could continue being his second family. She truly believed that was some kind of generous compromise. As if she were standing on some moral high ground, offering me scraps of dignity she thought I should be grateful for. I stared at her as her lips kept moving, and all I could think was, how delusional do you have to be to think you have the right to lecture me? I turned to Harold, my voice calm and cold. "Let's get a divorce." But before he could respond, Melissa jumped in again, stepping between us like a mediator. "Margaret, take a breath. Please think about Brian. If this gets out, if people find out you're divorcing over something like this, what will the neighbors say?" I almost laughed out loud. Of course. Of course they'd care more about appearances than about me. And I should have known better. My son and his wife were never going to stand on my side. "I know exactly what you mean," I said quietly. "But at some point a person has to decide if they want to live without dignity." Melissa pressed on. "Just pretend it never happened, all right? Men make mistakes, it's how they are. You and Harold can keep up appearances for Brian's sake. You can still live your life." And after thinking it over, after listening to her endless persuasion, I agreed. I swallowed my disgust and made an agreement with Harold. We would remain married in name only. No more pretending in private. Just appearances for the sake of the kids. But in truth our marriage had died long ago. I thought I could hold it all in. One last sacrifice. One last compromise. But then my body began to falter. I went to the hospital alone, feeling a strange discomfort I couldn't ignore. And that's when I got the diagnosis. Cancer. That's what all my silence and endurance bought me. Disease. Why should I be the one to pay for his sins? Why should I keep breaking myself just to protect the fragile pride of a family that never saw me? To hell with silence. To hell with sacrifice. To hell with pretending everything's fine. I'm done shrinking myself to make others comfortable. I'm done swallowing poison and calling it peace. "Let's go, Brian," I said calmly. "Let's go see for ourselves. See if I'm really just making things up." No sooner had the words left my mouth than Brian grabbed Harold by the arm and stormed out the door. I followed them slowly and steadily, my suitcase wheels clicking softly on the pavement behind me. Melissa hesitated for a moment, then finally pulled Mason along and trailed behind us. According to the documents Joanne had given me, they'd only moved in earlier this year. The house was newly bought. with money Harold had scraped together by secretly selling off his late parents' old home and several plots of land from his hometown. When we reached the house, everything I'd said was confirmed. And that's when Brian snapped. His emotions erupted like a volcano, years of suppressed pain, confusion, and bitterness finally spilling out. He turned to Harold and started yelling, his voice shaking with rage. He wasn't just angry about today, he was bleeding from every wound Harold had ever left on him. He recalled things from childhood, one memory after another, like the time in elementary school when he reached for a piece of roast chicken at the dinner table, only to be barked at by a drunken Harold, "Go ask your mother." Or the time in middle school when he didn't have enough for lunch and dared to ask Harold for help, only to hear again, "Ask your mom." Or that moment during his most confused, aching teenage years, when he finally gathered the courage to ask his father about life, about purpose, only to be waved off with, "Talk to your mom. I don't have time for your nonsense." His voice cracked with emotion, tears welling in his eyes as he shouted, "All this time I thought maybe Mom and I just weren't good enough. That maybe if we tried harder you'd finally love us. But now I know you never meant to love us. You already gave all of that to someone else. You gave your time, your money, your heart to a different woman. A different family." And then with all that fury still burning in him, Brian lunged. He tried to attack the woman. Harold instinctively stepped in to protect her, and the two of them, father and son, began to fight right there on the front lawn. The neighbors came out. People watched from their windows. Someone must have called the cops because minutes later, sirens pulled up and two officers stepped in, breaking up the fight and hauling both Harold and Brian into the back of a squad car. Just before they shut the door, Brian turned to me, face twisted with tears and fury, and shouted, "You're so selfish, Mom. You blew this whole thing up just because you wanted a divorce. I know Dad wasn't great, but you two were together for decades. Couldn't you just keep it together a little longer? You had to burn everything down. For what? Are you happy now? This was supposed to be a celebration. A party for Mason. Now it's a goddamn circus. Are you proud of yourself?" Harold, from the other side of the car, growled through gritted teeth. "You got what you wanted, didn't you? You had to ruin everything. I had it all under control. Everything was fine until you ripped the curtain down. You think exposing me changes anything? What the hell do you gain from this?" Then Melissa stepped in, her voice sharp and cold. "Margaret, I told you not to drag this out. You had to go and make it public. Now the whole neighborhood's talking. And those properties he sold? We could have worked something out, gotten a bit of it back. But no. It's all gone." She glanced around bitterly. "That land's being redeveloped next year. There's a resort going in. The payout was going to be huge. But thanks to your little drama, we'll never see a dime of it. You just had to blow everything up. What the hell were you trying to prove?" One by one they all took turns blaming me. From their own angles, for their own reasons. And yet somehow I felt perfectly calm. Then Mason, standing off to the side, suddenly shouted, "But it was Grandpa who messed up. Why is everyone yelling at Grandma? Didn't you say that if someone does something wrong they should apologize?" My heart clenched for a moment. But Melissa quickly pulled him into her arms, bent down, and whispered something in his ear. When Mason looked up again, his eyes had changed, cold, distant, unfamiliar. And I understood. I didn't say another word. I turned away from that house and walked off. Back home, I picked up my suitcase, already packed, and without so much as a glance behind me, I stepped out of the door. Out of that house. Out of that life. Out of that place that no longer and never truly belonged to me. After that day, I cut ties with my so-called family for good. The first few nights, I woke up startled, heart racing from old habits and restless dreams. But over time I found peace. After all, this was exactly what I wanted. To sever everything and finally live for myself. The pain? It wasn't nearly as unbearable as I once feared. I splashed my face with cold water, dried it with a towel, and looked into the mirror. Wrinkled skin, silver hair, tired eyes. Still, I smiled at my reflection. Then I picked up my phone and called Joanne. I asked if she still planned to take that trip she'd mentioned this month. Joanne has been my dearest friend for years. We used to run stalls together at the local market back in the day. She had just lost her husband and I was living like I didn't have one. We leaned on each other through everything, raising our sons, managing life, and holding each other up when no one else did. A few years ago, her son Jason's business took off. He hired a housekeeper to help around the house, and Joanne finally started enjoying life. traveling, exploring the world. She'd invited me along so many times, but I always had some excuse. I was always too busy with family. But now I was free. When I called, she was thrilled. "What changed?" she laughed. "You finally found some time?" "I'm divorced," I told her. Figured it's time I got out and cleared my head. She asked where I was staying and I gave her the name of the hotel I'd checked into. "I'll be there soon," she said. "Wait for me." What I didn't expect was that she wouldn't come alone. She brought Jason and his wife Emily with her. Before I could object, they packed up my things and whisked me away to their house. "Just stay with us for a while," Joanne insisted, brushing off my protests. "Don't overthink it." Emily, seeing how uncomfortable I looked, smiled gently and said, "You've done so much for us. When our daughter was little, you were always there to help. This is just us returning the kindness." Jason added earnestly, "Please think of me as your son. If it weren't for you helping us when we were struggling, my mom and I might have ended up on the streets." Their words made my throat tighten. The truth was, they were giving me far too much credit. All I'd ever done was help Joanne when she was sick, babysit a few times, and lend them a little money when they needed it. Just the kind of things close friends do for one another. My fingers brushed lightly against the pearl necklace around my neck. Jason's birthday gift to me this year. In fact, he'd never missed a single birthday. From the moment he started working, he brought me something every year. At first, it was small trinkets, simple but thoughtful. Later, it was jewelry, clothing, even little surprises that made me feel seen. I used to hesitate, reluctant to accept anything. But he'd always say, "It's from all of us. A little thank you." So I started returning the gesture. Gifts for Joanne, a small token here and there. It made me feel better, like I was keeping the balance. But how do you repay kindness like theirs? How do you ever repay love that deep? All I ever offered was a helping hand, but they gave me back something far more precious. Joan just laughed and said, "That's what family does. You don't need a reason to care." Later, she asked Jason to book us a 15-day trip. And she was right. When your heart is heavy, a change of scenery really does help. With each passing day, I felt lighter. My body felt stronger, my mind clearer. When we returned, I found a small apartment and signed a lease. I knew my time was limited. I didn't want to die in someone else's home. I never told Joanne about the cancer. I just said I needed some quiet time alone. They didn't try to stop me. But they made me promise to call them if I ever needed anything. Then I began doing all the things I'd once dreamed about but never dared to try. And the first thing I did? I signed up for a dance class. I'd loved dancing since I was a child, but we couldn't afford lessons back then. This time I chose something bold, hip-hop. A class full of 20-somethings just to give something joyful to that little girl in me who once danced barefoot in the kitchen dreaming. I didn't care what the young people thought. I didn't care if they snickered behind my back about how awkward I looked. I didn't care about anything except how I felt. Because this time I was living for me. I practiced every day. Again and again I repeated every move, every beat, every step. I knew I'd get better. I knew even if time was running out, I would dance one perfect routine, just for myself. Like my life. Messy, imperfect, painful, but still mine. And this time I would be the one to write the final chapter. As long as I didn't give up on myself, as long as I danced with joy and honesty, my life wouldn't have been in vain. And slowly the rhythm grew easier, my body lighter, my moves sharper. The same kids who once giggled at me? Now they call me the cool lady. Time slipped by. 6 months passed in the blink of an eye. That morning, I rose early and headed to a small photography studio downtown. I had a portrait taken, my final one. Next, I went to a funeral service company and scheduled everything for my own farewell. I chose a sea burial. I wanted my ashes to drift with the currents, to roam freely across the oceans, reaching the corners of the world I never had the chance to see. Even if only in spirit, I'd travel, floating through places I once dreamed of, whispering through cities and landscapes I'd never touched in life. Then I returned to my dance class. I asked my instructor for a favor, to help me record one full dance performance. She agreed without hesitation. She told me she had an online account where she uploaded videos. A platform where, as long as no one deletes it, the video would live there forever. She even helped me set up a social media profile, and under her guidance I uploaded the video myself. I wanted to leave something behind, a trace of my existence, a flicker of movement, a moment of joy that told the world, I was here. The doctor said I had 6 months left. And after the divorce, I'd done everything I ever wanted to do. I truly thought I was ready for death. I had no regrets left. I'd made peace with the end. But then, death didn't come. 1 day passed. Then 10. Then 30. 2 months rolled by and I was still alive. The funeral company began calling me regularly to check in. At first, their tone was gentle and sympathetic, the way you'd speak to someone whose time was slipping away. Polite, delicate, respectful. Then came the subtle shift. Their voices grew impatient, awkward. Eventually, they didn't even try to hide their amusement. "Ma'am," one of them chuckled during a call, "you're sounding pretty spry over there." I didn't bother hiding my irritation and snapped back a few words. The man just laughed. "With that kind of energy, I'd say you've got a long road ahead." And then he hung up. And for the first time in a long time, I laughed too. 3 months after the doctor's predicted death date, something unexpected happened. I went viral in our town's senior community. It all started with that dance video I uploaded. I'd thought it would just be a quiet keepsake, a final memento for myself. I didn't know the platform would actually promote the video to other users. But apparently it did. People watched it, shared it, liked it. Before I knew it, my little clip had become a local hit. Suddenly, people started recognizing me on the street. At the supermarket, the bank, the pharmacy, wherever I went, someone would gasp and say, "Hey, isn't that the grandma who does hip-hop?" Then they'd gather around me, showering compliments. How youthful I looked, how smooth my moves were, how even the younger folks weren't half as energetic. After one such encounter, still buzzing with their praise, I got a phone call. It was Harold. "Hey," he said casually. "When are you coming home? Brian wants to take you out for dinner. Mason's been saying he misses you." I looked at the screen, seeing the names of a son and grandson who hadn't bothered to contact me in months. I gave a faint smile. "Oh," I replied. "So you and Brian patched things up?" Harold chuckled. "Melissa thought we should all sit down and talk things through." I let out a soft hum. "Well, that's wonderful. I wish you all the happiness in the world." And I hung up. Right after, I sent him a text. "Unless it's about divorce, don't contact me again." But it was like the man had lost his mind. The next day he started sending me messages constantly. Roses, sweet nothings, flirty little quotes. I didn't reply to a single one. A few days later he called again. His tone was syrupy, overly polite, asking about how I'd been. Then mid-conversation he suddenly asked, "Hey, by the way, sounds like you're doing pretty well for yourself now, huh?" That was all I needed to hear. I didn't even dignify it with a response, just hung up. Later that afternoon, Joanne called me out of the blue. "We need to meet," she said. "Now. In person." I met her at a local cafe. She was already seated when I arrived, her expression serious. The moment I sat down, she slid her phone across the table. "Margaret," she said grimly, "you need to see this." Turns out Harold's so-called true love, that woman Denise, had uploaded a video online, publicly slandering me. In the clip, she painted me as some cold, heartless old hag. Said I was selfish and cruel, said I'd abandoned my husband and grandson just to go gallivanting around like some teenager, that I didn't care if anyone lived or died. Joanne hit play, jaw clenched. "Just listen to this garbage." Then she scrolled down to the comment section. It was worse than I imagined, vile, venomous, overflowing with filth. Poor man stuck with a woman like her. Old witch trying to act young, no shame at all. Who leaves their family at that age just to attend those stupid dance class? The few people who tried to defend me were instantly drowned in hate. One comment read, "Then I hope your mom turns out just like her." The deeper we scrolled, the uglier it got. Joanne's hands trembled with rage as she handed me back my phone. "These people don't know a damn thing about you." I quickly opened my own dance video, went to the comment section. At the bottom there were still a few warm words. Praise, encouragement, people cheering me on. But the further up I scrolled, the same hate had spilled over. People who'd followed the link from Denise's smear campaign, now using my post to spit their venom. "She's the one who should be sued," I snapped, my hands shaking with fury. "I'm going to press charges. She's the real homewrecker." I stood up so fast my chair nearly tipped. "I'm coming with you," Joanne said firmly, rising beside me. Just as we were about to leave, my phone rang again. "Harold." I sighed and picked it up, already bracing for another round of pathetic groveling. But this time it wasn't his voice. It was Denise. Gone was the soft, gentle tone of the thoughtful other woman. She was seething now, her voice sharp and shrill. "Hey, old hag. What's going on between you and Harold?" she snapped. "He's been sending you flowers and sweet messages. What the hell are you two talking about? You think you can win him back?" Her voice grated like a rusty blade. "He says I'm the only one he loves. That you're just a leftover inconvenience. A prop to keep his son from cutting him off. So tell me, what is your relationship with him now? Say something." She didn't even pause to breathe, just kept firing accusations, a barrage of paranoid, venomous spite. Suddenly, I laughed. I finally understood. This wasn't about love or justice. This wasn't emotion, it was jealousy. Insecurity. She wasn't lashing out because she cared, she was terrified. Terrified that I might still have some hold over Harold. That I might still have power she didn't. And that's what truly made her pathetic. Those two deserved each other. Shameless, self-absorbed, petty to the core. So this is your true face, I thought. The real woman behind the performance. Well, if she wanted a show, I'd give her one. Just before I hung up, I leaned into the speaker and shouted as loud as I could. "Tell that old bastard to go to hell." Then I ended the call. I tossed my phone into my bag and looked at Joanne, my chest heaving. And then I smirked. "Well," I said, voice steady and sharp, "now I really feel alive." 2 more months passed. Out of the blue, Harold, who hadn't contacted me in days, called and said he wanted to move forward with the official divorce paperwork. I chuckled softly and replied, "I'm not ready to sign anymore. Not unless, on the day of our divorce, you stand outside City Hall in front of everyone and publicly apologize for all the damage you've caused me over the years. And you must also clear my name. Tell the truth about all those lies your so-called true love spread about me online. If you can't do that, then forget it. Don't even bring up divorce again." He lost his temper immediately, cursed at me and slammed down the phone. I stared at the screen as the call disconnected, and my smile only deepened. That's fine. He'd come crawling back soon enough. Because my plan had already been set in motion, quietly, carefully, and not a single one of them had any idea what was coming. Sure enough, 2 days later he called again. This time his voice was frantic and full of urgency. He agreed to everything. That's when I knew the time had come. Time to settle the score. Using the information Joanne had gathered for me, I found Denise's contact number. I sent her a simple message. "Tomorrow 3 p.m. Meet me at City Hall. Let's clear the air face to face." The next morning Harold showed up right on schedule, standing outside City Hall just as I'd demanded. And in front of a growing crowd of bystanders, he did exactly what I told him to do. He apologized. He stood there, graying, wrinkled, humbled, and publicly confessed to the years of pain he'd caused me. He admitted to every act of betrayal. And most importantly, he clarified, loud and clear, that Denise's online smear campaign against me was nothing but slander and fabrication. People gathered around, curious and surprised. Phones came out. Videos were taken. Some clips were already making their way online within minutes. But Harold didn't care. It was as if he was in a trance, so desperate to get this over with, so desperate to wipe the slate clean, he didn't even flinch at the sight of cameras. Didn't care that his pride was being stripped away, one sentence at a time. And when his performance was over, we walked into the building side by side. 2 people who had once built a life together, now calmly submitting our divorce application. No drama. No tears. Just a final signature on a story that was long overdue for its ending. At exactly 3 p.m., the front steps of City Hall became a stage. A woman in a fitted red dress stood poised near the entrance, makeup flawless, posture radiating confidence, like a queen awaiting her coronation. Across from her, Denise stood stiffly, fidgeting with her purse, clearly anxious and uneasy. Then came Harold and I, arriving right on time. But he didn't spare Denise so much as a glance. Without hesitation, he walked straight toward the woman in red and took her hand in his with practiced ease and cold certainty. Denise's face went ghost white. Then, like something snapped in her mind, she lunged at him, grabbing his arm in desperation. But Harold yanked his arm away with a flick of disdain and walked forward with the red-dressed woman, not even bothering to look back. I followed them calmly, unfazed. After finalizing the paperwork, the clerk told us we'd need to return in a week to collect our official divorce certificate. As we stepped outside, Denise was still on the ground sobbing, clutching her phone, half screaming into it while cursing through tears, completely unraveling in public. Harold didn't even blink. The woman beside him spared Denise a single cool glance, then turned and walked off with him, heels clicking confidently across the pavement. I strolled over to Denise and stopped just in front of her. I gave her a smile, light, almost playful. "So, I heard you two were true love." Her expression twisted instantly and she shrieked, lunging at me again in a fit of rage. But I was ready. I sidestepped smoothly, letting her stumble right past me without so much as brushing my coat. "Damn, did you see that move? This lady's got some real fire," a bystander shouted, sparking laughter and applause from the small crowd. I turned and gave them a wave, grinning. "Thanks." Then I walked away, graceful, unbothered, and gloriously free. Back home, I barely had time to sit down before the funeral service company called again, as they had so many times before. "Hello, ma'am," said the familiar voice on the other end, tone half amused, half defeated. "It's safe to say, you really don't need our services after all." I laughed and hung up. Honestly, they weren't wrong. Maybe it was time to go back to the hospital just to check in. I couldn't keep living like I was dying forever, could I? The next day I went in for a full medical examination. And the results stopped me in my tracks. The doctor sat across from me, flipping through the report with raised eyebrows, his voice filled with surprise, and something like awe. "Madam," he said slowly, "your cancer cells are completely gone. No signs of metastasis. Nothing." I stared at him, stunned. "What do you mean? I healed?" "Like, completely." He nodded. "Yes. You're in remission. Completely recovered." "Recovered? But this kind of illness doesn't just go away, does it?" The doctor gave a small shrug and smiled. "It's rare, but it happens. Some patients experience what we call spontaneous remission. You're not the first. You can look it up. Medical journals are full of cases like this." He handed me my chart and added, "Actually, a colleague of mine is producing a medical podcast and video series. He'd love to share your story, real patients, real miracles. You could inspire a lot of people. Would you be open to an interview?" Tears welled up in my eyes, not from sorrow but from something far deeper, purer, relief. Gratitude. Triumph. I nodded, smiling wide. "Absolutely. I'd be honored. If my story gives even one person hope, then it's worth it." A week later, Harold and I officially collected our divorce certificate. From that moment on, there was no longer any legal or emotional bond between us. That afternoon, the woman who had appeared at City Hall with Harold came to see me privately. I handed her the final payment we had agreed upon in advance. She accepted it with a bright smile and said, "Thank you, ma'am. If any of your friends ever need a similar acting service, feel free to refer them. We offer a discount for returning clients." Later, I heard that Harold had gone into a full-blown frenzy trying to find her. He put up missing person flyers all over town. But of course he never found her. A year passed, and I became something of a local celebrity, the cancer-surviving hip-hop grandma. It didn't take long for me to build a small following. People online started calling me Cool Margaret and somehow the name stuck. Eventually, I partnered with someone to start a small business. My partner treated me with genuine respect, managed day-to-day operations, constantly checked on my health and cared for me like family. Everything was moving steadily forward. Life was bright, vibrant, full of possibility. Then one day someone from the past came knocking. Melissa. She hadn't contacted me in ages, and when she sat down across from me, she looked like a shadow of the woman I used to know. Gone was the polished, always smiling daughter-in-law. In her place was a worn-out, tired woman with hollow eyes and a heavy heart. She sat quietly for a while before speaking. "Margaret," she said softly, "I want to talk." I said nothing. Just watched her. I want to apologize," she murmured, wringing her fingers nervously. "I was naive, selfish. I thought as long as I was comfortable, nothing else mattered. I never realized just how much you'd been carrying all these years." So I said nothing. She kept going, her voice cracking a little. "All this time I thought I was a victim too. But now I see I was part of the harm. I was part of what hurt you. And now I'm living the life you once had, carrying everything alone. Brian, he's drinking a lot, shutting down, avoiding everything. He's turning into his father. And I'm the one left holding the pieces." Her eyes filled with tears. I finally understand. Leaving wasn't selfish. It was brave. I sat there quietly for a long moment, then finally spoke. You finally understand. Melissa nodded. Yes. I really do. I stood, walked over to her and handed her a tissue. You're finally the Melissa I always hoped to meet, I said gently. We looked at each other and smiled. In that moment there was no revenge. No bitterness. No grudge. Only peace. Only closure. A little over a month later, Brian came to see me. He started with an awkward attempt to ask about my old illness, offering some half-hearted concern before slowly shifting the conversation toward his own life. That's when I learned he was divorced. He sat across from me, visibly uneasy, fidgeting with his hands like a child unsure of his place. Mom, I know there were a lot of misunderstandings between us, he said, voice low. I'm sorry. I gave him a gentle smile. When I was younger, I used to think that enduring for others was a form of kindness. But I've come to understand that real kindness is loving yourself, and not making others pay for your own cowardice. I hope someday you'll truly understand my decision. He lowered his head and sighed. I continued, Brian, you're not a bad person. You've just never really grown up. You're not your father, sweetheart, and you never have to be. But now you need to step up. You have responsibilities. Your son and your family need you. He looked up at me, eyes slightly misty. I stood, walked over and pulled him into a hug. And in that moment I forgave him. Now life has settled into a rhythm again. Only this time my heart is steadier than ever. I still go to dance class every day, learning new routines, rehearsing performances with the younger members of our group. They call me their spirit coach, and I jokingly call them the extended version of my youth. The company is running smoothly now. I've stepped back from day-to-day operations, handing over more responsibility to the younger team. I've chosen instead to spend more time on myself. I've started learning French and picked up photography. I'm planning a trip to Europe next year, to visit the Louvre in Paris, to ride the scenic trains through the Swiss Alps, to dance freely in the streets of Spain. I've also joined a senior community outreach group, volunteering at nursing homes, teaching basic rhythm exercises and self-expression to elders who had long felt forgotten. Watching their eyes light up with each movement, watching them rediscover their presence in the world, it's a feeling beyond words. I often find myself standing in front of the mirror, tracing the lines time has etched into my face. But I no longer see flaws, I see stories. I see strength. Every wrinkle is a scar of survival, a reminder of everything I've fought through and grown from. I often say, I spent most of my life trying to please others, and now in the time I have left, I'm finally learning how to love myself. Because the answer to life was never just endure it. It's live it as yourself. I used to think growing old meant fading away, giving up, stepping back, being quiet. But now I know, even in life's second act, there are still endless roads worth walking, stories worth writing, dances worth dancing. I was once shackled by fate, but I found my own way to break free. I was once wounded by family, but I've learned how to forgive, selectively and consciously. I once believed my life was nearing its end. But really that was just the beginning of finally living. There are still so many days waiting for me. Days to dance, to explore, to live fiercely and fully. And as long as I'm still clapping for myself, I know the world will keep cheering for me too. This time I've truly stepped into my own light. I am Margaret. I am no one's shadow, no one's possession. I am simply, unapologetically me. And I love the woman I've become.